Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I'm honored and humbled to be here to help you understand the commercial real estate market and what we can do for you at Nexa here. So the commercial real estate market is different from the residential in as much as you get you're looking for the cash flow from the property to support the debt and not the borrower's income. So that helps a lot of people qualify for the loan as long as they have typically you put 20% down into a commercial project. But also if the seller will carry a note, then most commercial project lenders will allow a 90% loan to value with a seller carry of 10%, but the minimum amount that the borrower has to come into is with 10%. So I don't really know how much everybody in this audience is aware of cash flow and operating cash flow from a commercial real estate building and how it's analyzed by a lender. But what a lender will do is look at the operating income of the building, and that is the rent roll of all the tenants that are there, whether it's a multi-tenant industrial building, or it's a strip center, or it's a small office park, or it's apartment buildings with multiple units in it. They will require, when you submit a loan, to have the rent roll. And then what they do with the rent roll, they look at the operating expenses, and they will take out 5 to 10% vacancy depending on the market you're in. And then they'll look at the net operating income, and that net operating income needs to be able to service the debt on those projects you're trying to buy. On top of that, your borrower will need to have a credit score. They won't go against the personal credit report, but they will pull a credit score to make sure one of the partners or the individuals or the corporate officer, if you hold title, you can hold title in a corporation, an LLC. There's multiple ways you can hold title in the commercial real estate, but they will make sure that someone that owns at least 25% of the operating entity will have to personally guarantee this loan so that they can go after someone in case of default. What we can finance is there's pretty much nothing we can't finance. You know, warehouses, single tenant buildings, multiple unit buildings, strip centers, office buildings. Typically our loans that we can finance range from $300,000 for the smaller projects up to $15 million. And we also can do SBA loans. SBA loans are a specialized loan, and those are for, they're underwritten by the federal government. They're a small business administration loan, and those can be, you can buy property with 10% down. And what those are to do is to facilitate the owner of a business to be able to buy a building that he can occupy. And the one thing you must remember is that the owner of the small business must occupy 51% of the building. So if he gets a larger building and he wants to rent it out, he's welcome to do that as long as they operate 51% of the building. And that on the SBA loan, they do look at the cash flow of the business. They don't look at the rental income of the property, although if it is a larger building than what the business is going to occupy, then they will look at the tenant income. So based on that, I would say it takes about 30 to 60 days to close a commercial loan. Your appraisal is going to be more expensive than in a housing. It's typically around $2,000. And in that appraisal, as well as the sales price of the building, they also do a rental income analysis to make sure that during the tenancy, if tenants roll over, that you'll be able to get that rent to support that debt that they're going to underwrite for you. And
that's wonderful. Now, Nancy.
A lot of information in 5 minutes.
I don't know.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's actually as complicated as some people might think it is to actually work within the commercial real estate market.
No, it's not. There's a lot of money out there, and people are very willing to lend. And really what you want to make sure is that the income is going to support the debt. And, you know, once you have that, then you can get a loan pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. And then if you're
Credit driven at all?
Pardon?
Are they credit driven?
Well, they will pull the credit on the primary operate person, but no, they're typically driven by the income and where the property is located.
If you're an agent that's never really like gotten into commercial business before, where's a good place to start? Like if you were wanting to kind of move into that area of real estate.
Well, it depends if you're, so if you want to get a listing, then what you do is you either, you get your title company to pull up, you give them a graphed area where you want to market and focus on, and you give them addresses. They can pull up title and you find the owners. If it's single buildings, say you're going to work with the small business owners, then you would go knock on doors to your local businesses, ask if they own the building they're in or they're interested in buying a building, and you can offer this kind of financing for them, and maybe that would interest them to move. So there's those are the two ways to go after a new market.
And now, do you need any kind of experience?
No.
So when we have our real estate agents, they have people that they're reaching out to after 6 months or what have you. And let's say somebody says to them, hey, you know what? I was thinking about buying this building. We did hear with an SBA that you have to occupy at least 51% of that building if it's a small strip mall or what have you. But let's say it's not an SBA loan. Do they have to occupy 51%? And can they get into it with no experience?
Yeah, if they have an operating, because what will happen then is their operating income of their business will support the debt, because if they're buying a building for their business, it would be considered a single purpose building. So instead of having a single purpose tenant, it's going to be the cash flow from their business that would pay the debt.
Gotcha.
Because they're going to back out their rent and then put in their mortgage payment.
Perfect.
We have a question from Dwayne Anderson, it looks like. It says, I have a new commercial client who wants to buy 3 laundromats.
Thank you.
Sorry, 3 laundromats. Only one of them is on its own real estate. The other 2 are in leased spaces.
So the lease spaces, so how to finance those? Well, the one you can finance with either the one that owns the real estate, you can finance either with the SBA loan or a conventional loan. And you got to be careful on the SBA loans because they will, you'll get your home cross-collateralized if there's not enough equity in the property. The other 2 there'll be business opportunities that the SBA will finance, and those are typically a lender will require, they'll put their own overlays on it, and they'll typically require 25% equity into those business opportunity loans. And because there is no real estate, the lender will require to lien against their primary residence homes, any of the principals that are going to buy the laundromats. So if you own 25% or more, you will have your house liened. And you need to really be careful that you explain this to your client, because what happens when the SBA puts a lien against your primary residence and they subordinate typically to a first trustee, they have the right to stop any kind of refinancing at all. So, and the SBA guidelines say that, a bank has to allow a owner of a business to be able to refinance his home, but also a bank can put their own overlays on it. So, for example, I have a client and she wanted to she has over $1.5 million equity in her home because she's owned it so long and she wants to buy more property. And she failed to tell me she had an SBA loan from her business she owns. And so when I pulled the title, there was an SBA. So I went to the lender. I have to give the lender who needs to subordinate to new debt a full loan package. And the lender came back and said, we're not going to allow her to take any equity out. She can do rate and term only. And there's nothing you can do. So you got to be really careful if you're going to throw that home up there, because they'll control your ability to use equity in your home.
So because it makes sense, because that's like a higher risk for the SBA because there's no actual real estate collateral. So, to me, what that says to me is, especially if I'm newer, then I probably would rather deal with businesses that have an actual property or are looking for a property just to keep myself out of that hole.
Yeah, you got to be careful going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It is a rabbit hole.
And that lien lasts for the life of the loan?
Yep, till the SBA loan's paid off.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the lender, so on my transaction, the lender came out and said, the SBA lender said, well, she could take her equity and pay off our loan. But that's not as easy as that because she had a partner and they lien all the partners' homes that you have 25% or more equity, right, or in the business. So anyway, it was messy. And no, she didn't get her money. She got rate and term, but she couldn't pull her $1.5 million equity out of her home.
And generally speaking, like when you have your mixed use properties, those are going to generally be commercial loans too, correct?
Right, the mixed use properties, yeah, we can finance, I know in some cities or areas, there's the retail space below and the apartment above. We can do those kind of mixed use. Those are typically 20% down. And again, these loans will allow a 10% carryback of the seller, or as much as you like, by the way. But the borrower will have to put in a minimum of 10%. And if you are getting secondary financing from the seller, the income needs to cash flow that debt also.
Actually,
Yeah, if you want to submit a commercial loan to a lender or you want to bring something to your next loan officer, what you need to keep in mind, what initially a lender is going to want to see if they will even take your project on is they want to see, photo of the property. Sometime you can go to loopnet.com and that's where you can see commercial real estate or find it for your buyers. Or look for listings that are expired if you want to try to list the property. But what you'll need is like a photo and you need the rent roll so they can see what the income stream is and any other data that you might have on the property. And then because basically when you're doing a commercial real estate loan, they're looking at the property more so than anything. And then they'll tell you, if they are interested in that property or not. And each lender has a little bit different criteria for loan submission, but they're pretty much all the same. It's about the property and the principal. They do pull, as Dan asked, they do pull a credit report, a tri-merge credit report.
mm-hmm.
They look at it because, they don't say, okay, if you get below this credit score, we're not going to do it. But they do make a determination as a principal, do you pay your debt? So, but the interest rate is determined by the property and the income stream. And the interest rates on commercial right now are running about 8 to 12%, depending on the project.
So if you're if you're somebody who wants to go one step further with the process, and what if you have a client that has an investor that literally wants to buy the property, build the building, and then lease it out? Does that happen as often as we think, or?
Well, so they want to do a spec development, basically.
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple lenders that will do up to $3 million projects on a spec build, and you don't really need any kind of experience. They'll work with new investors, but you're going to pay 13% for that. They don't look at any kind of income, but if you default on that construction loan, they will own your project right away. So spec building is mainly for more sophisticated developers that have done it more than one time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like not a first-time investor in commercial real estate then, for sure.
Right. So they make it very costly to enter the field as a developer right now.
That makes sense. Can buyer get a loan for existing business with land and buildings? And can the current income of the businesses be used to qualify? So they don't own the business, they just want to buy the business. So that would be more, I would think, under your SBA loans, correct?
Oh, right. And so what if they own the building and the business and you have a buyer that wants to buy the business? Yes. So how they get qualified, they do get qualified on the cash flow of the business as well as the building and they can. So what it would be split into two loans, basically. One would be for the building and the other would be for the business opportunity part. And you can package that under the SBA guidelines and buy that. And but on the business opportunity part, because there's not going to be enough equity in the real estate, they will lien your primary residence, or if they have multiple properties, they will pick and choose how many they're going to control for you.
Okay.
But that will get you in the business, and then once you're solid and running, then you can always take the SBA loans out.
Awesome.
And I would be, you always want to make sure you get a preferred lender at a local community bank for SBA loan, because the FDIC regulates that the community banks are mandated to put money back in the community. So what you will find is that your local community banks will do a much better job of giving you the kind of money you want for your SBA loans versus a national bank like Wells Fargo or Bank of America. And you also want to make sure they're a preferred lender, because a preferred lender has been approved by the federal government to underwrite the SBA loans, and they don't have to go to the government to get the loan file approved.
That makes sense.